Well, you can, and we'll educate you on how to do that today. But how much is your time worth? And really, an agent is going to be able to save you quite a bit if they're doing what they do well. Go ahead. All right, so strategizing. This is basically coming up with a game plan. So how do you put all the pieces together to make sure that you really are maximizing your net profit and maximizing your net savings in the entire process? Never too early to do this, and all you really need is a seller's consultation and your financial figures. Go ahead. And with this planning part, this is really taking all of the things into consideration. So now it's talking about, what's important to you in terms of, do you want to rush something to the market? Do you want to, hammer down and make it kind of your full-time thing to get that house ready, or do you want to take your time, And then in terms of the listing and marketing strategy, there's different times that you might want to hit the market for different results. Ownership issues, this might be that there's multiple parties involved, and that can get kind of complicated. Or occupancy plans, like, okay, well, we're going to sell, but we also need to, we also need to rent back while we try to find our new place. So that's kind of an occupancy plan that we need to come up with. In terms of your replacement search, do you want to go out there and try to get your new house under contract before you've sold your old house? There's challenges there, and we need to plan around it. Risk analysis, market analysis, and pricing strategy. So again, all of these things come into consideration. And in terms of the order operation, it's kind of hard to see these, and I apologize for that. So here we have selling first. Basically, first of all, I want you to know that if you're selling your home, you can make finding a suitable replacement home a requirement of selling your home, which is really, really nice. So there's a few different ways you can do this. Most people probably start over here. This is a simultaneous, or basically you're selling and buying at the same time. And so some of the pros here are that you have low or no carrying costs. It's easier to do in a seller's market for sure. You get to move once, and again, these represent savings opportunities. These now represent extra costs. So the cons are you have to have a contingent offer, which means that you have to sell your house to get the funds to buy the house, and that's going to make you less competitive. You're subject to the market. So if it's easy to buy, it's going to be hard to sell, and vice versa. And you're going to get, it's going to happen that way. And it's a shorter time frame. So it might feel a little rushed when you're doing this. There are other options though. And these other options, come with their own pros and cons. So if you buy your home first, basically you're living in your house, so you go out there, you start your search. And if you have the means financially, you can actually buy the house that you want to replace your house before you ever sell. So you can wait for the motivation, as in wait for the right home. You can time the market better, and you can move once, which is really nice. Now the cons are you must have the equity and or be able to qualify for some sort of bridge loan or home equity line of credit. And again, if you're curious about whether or not this is something that you can do, that's why Mike is here, and that's why we partner with him. So know your carrying costs and pad your budgets. This is another thing too, because if you're going to find your house first and then close it and then either rent or sell your home, you're going to need to probably be able to float a few months of 2 mortgages. And if you can't do that along with whatever loan product that you've taken out to be able to get the down payment here, then this might not be the best situation for you. And finally, there's a sell first situation. So you could sell the home that you're living in right now if you own it, and then you can move twice, move somewhere, rent for a little bit, and then move into another place. You could have a liquid down payment. In this case, you can have no contingency, which actually allows you to save money when you're buying. And then you can time the market again because you're separating the events. The cons are you got to move twice, and you have to have somewhere to go. Does that make sense? All right, so pricing strategy. A home is truly worth what a buyer is willing to pay and a seller is willing to accept in today's market. That's the true definition. But we're going to try to, as a professional, help guide you towards a price that would cause the home to sell on the market. Ultimately, that's it though. The market will determine the price. So we're going to help you come up with a conservative baseline. And at this stage, that basically is just a good number to start guiding the decisions. And we'll get closer and closer and get that number to be more accurate, obviously, as we get closer to listing the property. So we've got 2 different kind of models of pricing that we use. There's this traditional pricing model, which is basically you're looking at a comparative market analysis and you're going for the highest price you could possibly get that's still in the market. So if it's well outside of the market, you're not going to be able to get it. But if you can price it as high as you can possibly get, you might have to wait a while. So this might be 2 or 3 weeks until you get that offer. You might only get the one offer and it might come in low and you might have to try to work them up. The pros here, it's a more straightforward thing. Basically, there's no guesswork here other than you know what your price is and you're putting it up there. You might have to drop it to on the table. The cons are you have less ability to negotiate good terms with your buyer because you've put a high price up there and they feel like, they might want to come in a little bit lower, or, if it's the only offer you have, you might have to take whatever loan product they're using. It can take longer and can cause a negative stigma. So if if you employ this model when everything else is employing this model and flying off the shelf in the spring, if your house is the only one that took a month to sell when everyone else went in a weekend, buyers start to get curious. Why? What happened to that house? What's wrong with it? So that's the negative stigma. It could be more of an appraisal risk too. So if you're putting it so far up in the market and then you wait and you wait and you wait and you finally find that buyer for which the house is perfect, that pays your amount, well, there might not be a lot of supporting data in the marketplace to allow that's what it's worth, because it might just be what it's worth to that person or to you. So energy pricing is kind of a different model that we use a little bit more in the spring when the sales volume is up, when the showings are up, when it's kind of the heat is in the market. So what we're intentionally doing here is pricing it low in the market during a time of low inventory to incite a bidding war and try to get multiple offers. Then we could, multiple offers and a higher price ideally than we could even get in a traditional pricing model. So the pros here, you can often negotiate all desired terms in addition to price, because once people are kind of tapped out on their price, they're going to start throwing in everything else, the bells and whistles. We'll take it as is. We'll give you time to live in your house while you find your new one. So there's a lot of great terms that you can get in addition to price. And truly, I know this sounds odd, but it is nearly impossible to underprice with the right amount of time on the market. So if you give it a full weekend, it's being exposed to everyone out there that's an active buying participant right now, and we have a lot of those in a seller's market. And if you were to put the price at $1, it would instantly shoot up to about where it should be, and then people start to compete and typically drive it over the market price. So the cons here, you have a serious risk of buyer's remorse if you start pushing people too hard. So when you keep coming back at the next person with the previous person's price as they escalate up $1,000 at a time, there's going to be a point where someone just says, I'm done, and it might be after you've already gone under contract with them. So you need to really, this is a very delicate process actually. And it really typically only works in a low inventory environment like we're in right now, true seller's market. Go ahead. Oh wait, never mind. I got it, it's in my hand. So market seasonality, this is really what determines which one of these we wind up using or suggesting. The springtime has a lot of low inventory and the highest showing traffic, as we'll see in a second. It has the most bidding wars and there's more competition for buyers. So that's really where it thrives. Summer starts to do a little flip around July 4th about. More inventory comes in the market as the kids get out of school and the sellers, get their stuff together and get out there. We also have a few more buyers though, because a lot of those sellers are buyers. We tend to have our highest prices of the year. So trying to drive the price up and price higher than the next one doesn't typically work as well. We're already pretty tapped out for the year. And there's more competition for sellers. Sellers are competing with the 5 other homes on the block that are for sale. And in the winter, we have this very low inventory again, but we also have fewer buyers. We do have some of the lowest prices of the year, and there's less competition for both buyers and sellers. So this is just a slower, colder time. This is when the springtime bidding wars really start to put the heat in the market, and this is when things start to kind of fatigue, if you will, and we'll take a look at that. So here's actually some market data that supports it. And in most of these graphs, what you'll see here is the different lines represent different price points. And so you can see over here the lowest price houses and the highest price houses over here with an average in the middle. Early spring listings sell quickest across all prices, right? So we really have this as a days on market. How long is it taking them to sell? Here we are, March, April, almost every year. Late summer listings typically need price reductions. So what you can see here is the percent with price reductions. And notice it starts at 20. And it goes all the way up to about 35% of the market in that August, September, October timeframe are dropping their price to get it sold. Here we have the market peaks in April in most years, and luxury listings almost always get less than asking. So this is sold price versus asking, with 0 being your break even. 300, they got 300. You can see most of the time the smallest, cheapest houses are getting over asking, and significantly quite a bit in the springtime bidding wars, but we're getting at asking for the rest of the year, whereas luxury homes are typically sitting 96% of their ask. And then over here we have by July, basically seems to be when we see the change happen here. By about July, 1/3 of all listings will need a price reduction to sell. Any questions? So again, there's no sugarcoating in what we do. As a trusted real estate consultant, we consider ourselves more like, like a doctor or something like that. If we were in a position where we had to tell you the number you're looking for your house or what you need to get out of it is not something that we believe that would happen due to the market at the time or the comparative market analysis that we've done for you, we're going to tell you that. And then we're going to try to figure out a strategy around that. We're not we're not agents out there that are going to be trying to buy the listing, meaning like telling you a house that we believe will sell for 450 is going to hit 500. But we will guide the process and you control the decisions. And as long as we can come to an agreement about how this is going to go and that it's in your best interest, we will, we'll work with you on those kind of things. So you can also cancel anytime for any reason if you were to use any of our impact agents. So at that point, after you've really looked at the market, you've done the budgeting and the planning and strategizing and all of it, it all makes sense. That's about the time that I think it's right to make the commitment and the decision. If someone's flying in trying to tell you need to work with them right away before you've actually figured all this stuff out, well, then I would question why they're doing that. So now we're going to step into, you've kind of made a decision on who you want to help you, or you're doing it on your own, in which case, like I said, we'll kind of educate you here. This is the property preparation. You need long enough to complete all your projects. So at this point, you should have a laundry list. They might be light updates. They might be some pretty heavy hitting projects. You need the plan, you need great contractors, you need time, and you need knowledge. And this is really what it's boiling down to. This is the conversation we should have had already, is it worth it, right? So if you're looking through a house in the middle of the spring, trying to figure out if you need to buy new carpet, well, you might not need to in the bidding wars. But if we're in late fall, you might need to do carpet. You might need to do paint. So some of these things that we do through the process of that walkthrough and then further, maybe pre-inspections or anything like that, we figure those questions out for you so that you're not kind of left in the dark and you're not leaving that money on the table. If there are major repairs that need to be done, it's a good time to get bids for them before you dive in, because if you're under contract and you're finding these only at your inspection, through your inspection process, now you're under contract, that's a little late in the game personally for me, for you to get a big number like that, because you should be taking that into consideration early on. So there's permits and code requirements that you need to take into consideration. Decluttering is actually usually the biggest thing that we're winding up suggesting. Staging, we actually do have a staging consultant who's with us today. She's on our team, so we oftentimes hire her out. She's way better than I am. We have cleaning crews, and we always have some sort of preparation strategy. And in terms of decluttering and staging, these are just a couple light tips for you guys, but actually this really probably gets, I don't know, would you say 90% of the work done?
Yeah.
It's actually not that hard. It's just a lot of work if you have a lot of stuff. So 5 items are left for horizontal surfaces is a good way to go. Give buyers the space to imagine their belongings there. So if you have a room that's so packed with furniture that there's nothing else that you could conceivably conceive in that room, it's going to stop the buyer in their tracks from kind of moving in mentally. And that's what you want them to do. You want them to basically have moved in mentally by the time they walk out of their showing, because that's really going to get them attached to this property is the right property for me. And this is an example of sometimes the opposite is true, where you have a space that just is undefined and then you need to add staging. I think a lot of times people think that staging is adding, it's always additive. Most of the times it's subtractive. In a situation like this where it's additive, instead of incurring the costs of renting all the furniture or trying to go buy really fancy stuff, there's also options like this was actually virtually staged. So all of this is actually photoshopped in. So there's a lot of different options there. And these are, again, some just little tips. So deep clean immediately before your pictures. Professionally clean the carpets. Remove any bad smells. That's really important. So remove large furniture for staging. Less is more. Have a designer's eye or hire a designer. Give hints in awkward spaces like this one. And then this is, again, a virtual option. So in terms of repairs and upgrades, these are the two biggest tenets for me. If it's distracting, fix it. If it's scary, explain it. So again, as a buyer's walking through your house, if they're really interested in it, they're kind of starting to fall in love with it. And as they're starting to move themselves in mentally, if they see a hole in the wall, it's going to completely derail them. So if it's going to be a distracting item, fix it. Just go ahead and take care of it. And then if it's scary, so if they get down to your unfinished basement and they see a crack that's an inch wide, 10 years, and it's always been an inch wide, they're assuming that if they move too quickly, the house will fall apart. And that's just their context. They don't have any context for your home. So if it's scary, you want to explain it. You want to take these things head on. So what I would do with something like that is suggest that we get a structural engineer in there to do the report ahead of time, because every buyer is going to be asking for those things to be explained later in the process. Let's tackle it head on. Let's get the explanation from a professional and let's leave that out there for showings. You know what I mean? And we'll put it into the listing system too. I mean, it doesn't make sense to try to hide any of that stuff to get more people coming through your house. You want people to understand and feel comfortable. And then these are just some ideas. Sometimes you don't necessarily know without a really good contractor what's possible in a given space. So you might have a really old, tired kitchen like this, and you're like, well, nothing's really broken, and I don't really know what kind of money I could spend or what kind of money I could get. And there might be an amazing transformation that you can have that would pay for itself. But without the knowledge of having sold so many homes, you don't necessarily know if it's going to be worth it. And without having the contractors that can get it done in the right way for the right price, you might wind up leaving money on the table or just overpaying for something like this. Let's see here. Yeah, that's about all I need. Any questions on that stuff? Cool. Upgrades with the highest ROI. I'm sure you guys hear this all the time. Kitchen and bath. That's a big one. So that's typically going to be 90% of your investment back, all the way up to getting 150 ROI. Curb appeal is a big one. So that's going to be exterior paint. It's going to be your front door. It might be garage door. A lot of times this is just landscaping. And then finally, new paint. So while that one might be something you want to contract out, because honestly, you can usually see poor work. If it's not something you do, I wouldn't necessarily suggest trying it for your first time before your sale. But curb appeal and new paint, you can do those. You know what I mean? This could be just cleaning up the yard finally. So there's a lot of stuff that you could do with your own time and investment that will get you a lot of money back. All right, and then finally, once everything's kind of cleaned up, staged, there's the matter of items of personal nature. So you need to depersonalize the home. Again, this is right in line with people need to be able to move in and kind of see themselves living there. If it's potentially polarizing, go ahead and remove it. You know what I mean? This is taxidermy. This is any sort of right or left centric political stuff on the walls. Even sometimes, large religious objects. It's nothing against it, and whatever it is that you believe in. It's just that in order to appeal to the most buyers, if that person comes in and is completely slanted the other way, it might be a great fit for them and they might be your perfect buyer for the highest net, but they won't consider it because they attach something to it. So avoid displaying more than 5 family photos per room. If you have that photo wall collage, maybe just pare it down a little bit. You know what I mean? Try to make it stylish. And again, this is something where Tegan will come through and say, that's good, that's too much, that's too little. But usually actually boring is good. That's what we're going for.
I typically say to take all of the family photos down, because if they do see you in the space at all, they then still associate you with that property. So, you're packing up anyway to move, so you can still place those more important items in a box first. So
very, very, very good point there. Tegan just said, you're already packing up anyway, so you might as well take those personal items of effect down and pack them up so that they're nice and safe. You can just buy all the frames with the stock photo, families in them and put those back up.
I used to tear them out of magazines for the model.
That's awesome. Okay, so now you've got all the repairs done, you've got the staging done, you've done the depersonalization, you've cleaned it up. It's time to capture and then compare. So this is the part that I think is kind of important that I don't know a lot of people take into consideration, because let's say that whole process took you 3 months. Things have changed in that time frame. Your comparative market analysis, like what the sold properties are that the appraiser will use, may have changed. So we want to update that. And then finally, what are you up against? Because when you started this whole process, you might have been the only one thinking about selling in that neighborhood, and now there's 3 other homes in the market that beat you there. So we really need to take the time to do this part. The capture is literally just getting the best pictures or documentation of that home in that shape that you can possibly get. So this is usually coming up 1 week before listing, and the requirements are a great agent, a fresh comparative market analysis, your competitors, your competition, which might not be your comps, a listing agreement and required disclosures, and then finally a contract advisor, which we'll go over here in a second. So about 1 week before closing, this is the way that I kind of like to do it. Basically, step 1 is you contact the agent and let them know you're at least a week out from being ready. The final cleaning happens. This is right before the pictures are taken, so that there's not even an opportunity for it to get messed up again. Your agent will review the pictures with you and run that new comparative market analysis, see what else has sold to either justify or that might have actually worked against you in terms of the price that you were looking for, and to assess your comps and your competition. So the competition is a little bit different. Instead of looking for comparative sales, we're actually looking for, okay, let's say we want to list the price or the home at $450. Well, let's see, if I had $450 burning a hole in my pocket right now, what else could I get in about 3 miles? Because that's what buyers do. That's how they're going to search. This is the amount of money I have. Here's where I'm looking. So now let's look side by side. We've got your professional pictures and their professional pictures. And which house would you choose, right? So that's kind of a process we go through to finally make that decision of what is the most strategic price to list your property at. So then we decide on the final price, and we complete a listing agreement, and then all the disclosures, which we'll talk about in a second. Decide the date to go live, and plan the showing times and access. So this is where you start to hammer out the logistics of, okay, well, I need to take the dogs out, or I need to, we put our baby down at this time, and we can literally, there's so much flexibility in the scheduling systems that we use that anything that we need to do, we can. Ideally, we want to give people as much time to show your home as possible, but we can control that, and we can tailor that around your life. Your life does not have to stop to be able to sell a house. And finally, you review and approve the listing that we now put together, and you prepare to list for sale. Got it.
No, I didn't do it.
She was going to play the song, but that's totally fine. You can do this in your head. There you go. So, and then in terms of the division of labor across all of the things that we've talked about so far. So this is, sorry, I'm going to correct this soon, but this is us. So this is us working together. This is like me as in the agent, and this is you. So the analysis and pricing is something that you do together. You have to make the decision, and we have to agree that we want to help you there. Listing the home is going to be us. Disclosures are going to be you. This is what you know about the home. The marketing is going to be on us, and vetting of the buyers that come through to make sure that they're actually ready, willing, and able to get you to the closing table. We're going to be doing that. We go under contract together. So if we have multiple offers, or if we're presented an offer, you make the decision ultimately if you want to take it. We will make suggestions. Then inspection and resolution we do together. The appraisal basically is going to be on us because we're going to support the price that we've been asking for with data for that appraiser. And then finally, the closing we do together. And this is just a quick example of the exact same room shot with high quality professional photos. And actually, this is still probably a professional photographer, but just a much lower quality photo. So this is actually directly from the partner that we partner with, which is called Virtuance. And there's a couple things that are going on here. There's HDR, high dynamic range photography, which is causing all the light levels to be just about right and for things to really pop. And there's wide angle lenses, which are actually really helping to show the scope of the room more than just selling furniture. And this is incredibly important because, again, if you're competing against a ton of different listings on the market, you want them to be walking through your door. Like, you got to get them in the house. So typically what happens is they sell 45 times faster and 75% closer to the goal price than the properties marketed by our top competitors. So choosing the right tool for the job, it's not necessarily that in every single scenario we need to do a virtual tour, but we have the option of doing virtual tours, videos, feature cards that we put around to call out things that people can't necessarily see that are of value in the home, and floor plans in situations where they might not know, okay, does that enter into this, or is that room defined by this? So we have a lot of different options that we'll use, and each listing is a little bit different. Then in terms of positioning, so this is, again, really taking into consideration the competition, that CMA that we did, your timeline, the carrying costs, current market conditions, and then really figuring out where. So this is the adjustment of your price that we decided upon 3 months ago. So we're trying to figure out how to position your property to get it to sell and for you to meet your goals. We might go with the same price. We might go with a higher price because you did better on all of the stuff that you did to prep your listing. And we might wind up going a little bit lower because that's going to be truly the price that will get you to your goal, like that will achieve your goal. And so there are the homes that sell and the homes that sell the homes that sell. And what that says basically is that if there's 2 homes on the market and one is in better condition than the other, well, the one in better condition for the same price is going to sell first. And the one that caused that one to sell was the one that was overpriced for their condition. So that's truly what the positioning conversation looks like. Finally, let's sign a listing agreement. And this is this is actually getting into the contract stuff. It defines the price, the terms, the commissions. It outlines the inclusions and exclusions, what you'll be taking and leaving, and any additional requirements. So this is where we can actually define that you must sell your home in order to, you must find a replacement home in order to sell your home. So we can do things like that, or that you need time to do that process. Then there will be disclosures that you need to sign. So seller's property disclosure is just everything you know about the house that you lived in. And if you didn't live in it, or if it was an investment, then those are going to be basically mostly blank because you don't want to make any statement about something that you don't know. that could be a liability. Square footage, source of water, seller advisory, these are just state required disclosures. And lead-based paint. So lead-based paint is going to be important here in our state for anything built prior to 1978. But you can get yourself in some hot water if you're not privy to this. And then finally, you don't need to be privy to that, because if you're using an agent, not only do we basically kind of help guide the process, but in order to help you understand the process, we have put together things like contract advisors that go through every single line of the contract that you're signing and breaks it down into layman's terms. So you don't have to be able to interpret legalese. Now, the nice thing about this is that, if you really have a question about a specific part of the contract, you can, take a look at this first or ask us any questions. It's not like we're not going to be there, but it's just another helpful tool that we use to make people feel really comfortable with knowing exactly what it is that they're getting themselves into. And the contract advisor are clinically proven to be the best over-the-counter sleep aids on the market today. I know I wrote them. Finally, now we're selling the house, right? Now we're out there, we're in the open marketplace, and we're competing against other listings. So this might take, 3 to 4 weeks on average right now. And that is actually about the time, with 26 days on market. So it could go in a weekend, but plan for it to take this long. Because if you haven't planned for that, then it's going to be a surprise when you get there. So you need a great agent, you need the multiple listing system access, you need a comprehensive marketing plan. And all you're trying to do, I've mentioned this before, is maximize your exposure. You're really trying to get as many people through that doorway as possible. That's how you get your highest net. Because the truth is, if you do 7 showings, of those 7 buyers, of course they're all interested because they found it online, told their agent came and bring them through. But there might not be, of those 7, the 8th person was the one that really needed that specific configuration, that loft, that main floor master. And so the more people you get in there, the more likely it is you're going to find that person that's going to pay the highest price for it. So tell everyone about your sale. That's really it. I mean, you can do this actually in a grassroots method, tell people at work, and we're going to do it digitally and professionally through our marketing plan, but you really never know where that sale is going to come from. This is kind of a breakdown of where most buyers are looking. Obviously, the internet is one of the biggest pieces. The real estate agent suggesting properties is another one. And then signs, friends, home builders, new sellers. Oh, we need to correct that. And print ads. And here we go. So this is a study that the National Association of Realtors does every year to tell us where the information is coming from, and a few other things about like buyers and sellers in general as a demographic. 96% of them are searching online. 83% of them are searching detached. So that's something to know if you're looking to sell a condo or a townhouse. You might have a smaller pool. 98% is that sold versus list price. So not everyone's getting their full asking price. In fact, most people are not. And the average time on market is about 3 weeks. So here, about 7% of the listings on the market are for sale by owner. And the median price of agent assisted is typically a little bit higher than the median price of the for sale by owner. 87% of buyers are working with an agent. So if you are going to try to sell the home on your own, I would highly suggest that you're willing to pay the 2.8% of the cooperative commission to the buyer's agent, because otherwise it's actually going to cut into your own bottom line. Whenever I start talking commissions with my sellers, we start here and I tell them, look, if you discount this, you're cutting into your own bottom line. Let's talk about my commission, what you're paying me, and then we can have a conversation about how I earn it. But even, I don't know if anyone's familiar with some of the discount brokerages out there like Trelora. They're now making some big changes where they used to try to cut this too, but that was their savings model and didn't work. They had to do price reduction after price reduction after price reduction to get their home sold. So now that Trelora even is actually suggesting that everyone pays the 2.8. Redfin, their 1% listing, they're still a 2.8% buyer's agent on that. So that's just something to consider. So in terms of marketing and being seen, there's traditional marketing methods. There's signs, open houses, door knocking, intra-office listings, word of mouth, brochures, flyers, and mailers. And they're all effective within their own realm. But there's digital marketing, which is obviously, since the internet has been really the prevalent thing. And truly the multiple listing system is the winner there. Getting it into the multiple listing system, which is the database of all of the listings that then gets pushed out to all the rest of the sites, is the most important thing. So if you're going for sale by owner, this is just not nearly as powerful as this side. And you want to do a little bit of both. And when you hire an agent, a lot of times we are going to do both. We leave no stone unturned. So listing aggregators are things that take the multiple listing system data and push it out to every site, because there's thousands of sites out there that sell homes now. Social media is another big one. Relocation companies. There's so many people moving in here for jobs that you want to be able to take advantage of that. Video marketing is another big one right now, and any other professional networks that you can kind of link into. LinkedIn. So multiple listing system syndication. This is how it actually gets pushed out, and this is just a very small representation of some of the sites that can be that can have your listing featured. I mean, Comcast even has them. So what you need to do is be a part of the multiple listing system, but also have those good content aggregators, so it's pushing everything out. And a good agent's going to have the best tools in the business to make sure that you're on every site. Now, some of these might, like Home Winks, might pick up your listing 2 days later. But that's another reason you might want to time it so that your listing hits the market on Thursday, so that by Saturday you're going to be on, on Oodle, because everyone shops on Oodle. And then in terms of showings, I call it maintaining the illusion. Again, same average time frame as your average time on market. You need a great agent, a tidy home. You need some sort of pet management, and a favorite restaurant or bar. Right? That's my suggestion, or a good walk, because there's going to be a lot of people coming through the home. And truly, if you do not want to do any showings, there's options for that we'll talk about later. But showing your property is the key to getting the highest net. You got to get people in there. And I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but again, we use a system called centralized showing system that will be able to, first of all, authenticate that all of these people are licensed real estate agents, that they have clients and they're coming into the house. It's only disclosing information about how to access your property to licensed agents. So that it's safe and secure, but it's also very versatile in being able to work around your life. Tips for success: keep the home tidy, remove all valuables. This is really important. Lock them up, put them away. I mean, you still, even though these are trusted real estate agents, they're still working with clients. So you want to make sure that you're kind of protecting yourself there. I would disarm alarm systems. It's just, regardless of how much information you give them about how to use it, they won't use it right, and it'll be triggered nonstop. Minimize the pet impact if you can. Try to make it seem as if the pets don't live there, but take them out if you can when you do the showings. Mention selling to friendly neighbors and ask for help. So if you've got that person across the street that has 7 cars parked on the driveway, well, maybe you give him $100 to park his cars elsewhere for the week, right? It's actually very important. And then absentee maintenance: if you're selling and you've already moved away, you need to take care of the house. And weekends and evenings are going to be the bulk of the showing traffic. So really prepare yourself to be basically, plan dinners out, maybe plan a weekend, and we'll take care of the house, we'll get it sold. Feedback. So we're going to collect feedback from all the agents that show the home. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that to kind of inform what we do, whether it's if we need to do any sort of price drops, or if they're saying we're well over where we should be. But a lot of times it's just little feedback on things that we can take care of. Take it with a grain of salt too. So selling can be emotional and exhausting, and it's just be prepared for that. Hiring an agent will be a good buffer between you and the exhausting and emotional parts of the sale, but it's still your home. So occasionally we'll need to adjust things. We'll be on market and we're not sold yet, and so we need to make some changes. And this might be 2 weeks after we've gone on the market. If we're not sold by then, we need to talk about it and see what we need to fix, what to do. So we'll have showing analytics, feedback, and a plan. And then when you're making course correction, it might not be price. A lot of times it is, though. You want to look again at your competition and your condition and any unchangeable factors that you really can't do anything about. And really take into consideration your ideal moving timeline, because you might not make a course correction as quickly if you really have no time pressure. But if you have time pressure, you really do need to plan for that. And then you also need to be able to basically compare your carrying costs, how much it's going to cost you to continue to be in that home unsold versus your net proceeds. This is especially true when the place is vacant. So now it's been sitting on the market for a month or two, and you're paying all the bills again for the utilities and the mortgage. Like, how does that compare to a $5,000 price reduction or something like that? And aggressive adjustments in price are usually yield the best results, to be fair. So 33% of sales, reduce their price. We talked about that. That's typically a statistic we see more in the late summer, fall timeframe when there's a lot of sellers competing. And our market always does dip in July as buyers start to take a break and many of the listings start to compete. And if we're still not sold, basically what we'll do is we will feed a bunch of realtors, we'll entice them with food and drink and bring them into your house And the other realtors can give us another professional opinion on what we might need to do to enhance the listing. And so we haven't done a lot of these in a while. We've been fairly effective with not needing them, but when they're needed, we use them. All right, so finally, offer review. Once you finally hook the buyer, and hopefully the right one, you're going to need to review that offer. And you really want to vet your buyers because you want to protect yourself from surprises. And this is something that we would do for you as your agents. So you got to ask the right questions. This is just something to know that the buyers, like this is again from the profile of home buyers and sellers. There's a lot of debt being carried out there. I think it was 35% of the buyers out there right now are first-time home buyers. They carry a lot of debt. They don't have a ton of income. This is actually $75,000 this year. This is a 2017 data. And the average amount financed is still 90%. So they're heavily leveraged. They've got a lot of debt. And their income isn't that high, comparatively speaking. And Mike knows this because I send him these people all the time. And he, is a magical man and he makes things happen and we get people into homes. But when you're on the listing side of things, it's good to know these things because you really want to figure out, like, do they have the means if the appraisal comes in low to close the gap, right? The answer is probably no. So 1 in 3 transactions at a given time in the year do wind up falling apart. And what we wind up doing to try to help you make this decision, again, we guide the process, we don't make the decisions for you, is we would put together a spreadsheet that really compares all of the things we need to think about and gives you a net offer because their offer price and their net offer, given the way that we write these contracts, might be different. And so they might be asking for concessions. Their loan amount is important, their type of financing. So we will compare all those things so you don't have to. And we will basically tell you, we think this is the strongest offer. You can review all of them and then you can pick. But in this case, like I said, this was not my highest offer in this specific bidding war, but I felt it was the strongest offer. And then this information that we use to help you make an informed decision is also what we use the same information to help the appraiser make an informed decision. And this is another way that we can help save you money, is because I send this over to the appraiser and I say, hey, I know you have the comparable sales and you can see the sold market data, but what you can't see is this demand that we had on this house. We had 142 showings in the first weekend and 9 offers, along with many people just giving up because they didn't want to write an offer. So this house, it was very easy to get it to appraise at the 323 when the last strongest sale in the marketplace was somewhere around 310. And finally, taking backup offers, right? So if you want to get leverage on the buyers, you want to basically have a best alternative to negotiating agreement with them. And that's in a backup. And so this, I just love this picture. If you can see it, you can't really see it that good, but it's the best. So when you see the slides, take a look at that picture in the background. All right, so finally closing, moving on. Now you've got someone under contract. You feel really good about them because your agent has vetted them for you. You want to negotiate all the terms before you're really hooked because basically 24 to 48 hours after receiving or reviewing the offers and then ongoing negotiation needs to happen. This state has a contract that is designed to protect consumers. And it's very, very heavily slanted towards the buyer's rights over the seller. So once you're, as a seller, once you're signed, you're pretty committed. And you want to negotiate while you're in the power position prior to making that commitment, or you can face the consequences. So the devil's really in the details. And this slide, I mean, basically it just means that you need someone who knows the contract in and out so that they can negotiate for you in a way that protects you and works to your best advantage. Having realistic expectations around the process, I think, is really important. Again, given that our contract is slanted towards the buyer's rights over the sellers, the earnest money amount, which is the buyer's skin in the game, is not really skin in the game. They can basically object to anything, and if they say the right thing, they get to take their money with them. The seller does have to sell, so don't sign up. Don't sign yourself up to sell unless you're 100% sure you want to. There's no changing your mind in the middle of the process. And finally, there's no to be determined within the contract. You shouldn't really leave, gray areas or things that, especially number values that just haven't been defined. That's just not something we wind up doing. All right, so inspection. This is usually happening in the first week. And these are kind of some of the heavy hitters that could wind up really changing the scope of the deal. These are super common things that we work with all the time. Again, if you do like a pre-inspection or if you have a good agent that's able to identify these things in that walkthrough well ahead of time, you've probably already addressed these. But know that within the first week, you might be coming across these things, and it's good to set aside that bit of the budget for the repairs or concessions. So if your buyer goes through and basically reveals to you something about your house that was wrong that you didn't even know about, we must then disclose that to all future parties. So that is a law here in Colorado. So, I mean, be prepared for that and know that if they have legitimately disclosed to you a true material defect, it's probably best to take care of it, because otherwise the next buyer you're going to have to tell them. And then in terms of resolving, if you don't have, you could repair, great, that's super easy. But if you don't have the money, there's always things that you can do with the proceeds from the sale that you're going to make. You can give a concession, or you can change the price. And finally, you might do a repair escrow, which is where you wait for the closing and all that money to come in, and then the title company will actually hold back some of the money, pay the repairman to do the repair, and then give you what's left over. And then when you get to appraisal, this is usually about 2 to 3 weeks after going under contract, which is the mutual execution of the contract. You kind of need to get the home show ready again. You want to sell it once to the buyer and sell it twice to the appraiser. And again, that spreadsheet that I said, that's something that we use to try to support your appraisal here. And this is truly what the appraiser is doing, is figuring out what it's worth. At this time, now we've got a buyer and we need to know, like, for that lender, what are they going to give them as collateral for the loan? So this person's word is essentially law. And it often happens that about a quarter of them are not quite appraising. So you either pre-negotiate it, or you basically, come up with something to take care of it ahead of time. And the appraisal packet, what you saw before, that thing that helps guide the sellers make the decision, that's what we wind up giving to them. It has all competing offers. It has any list of upgrades or updates. This is some of the homework that you have to do for your agent, is just to let them know what you've done to the place. The context, so if the seller took a lower offer because of beneficial terms, we let them know that. And then if this is kind of what they're doing, is an appraisal, but we can also bolster that with a comparative market analysis that we had put together, where maybe we found different sold sales. So know also that this appraisal process is a bit of an art form. It's not a science. It's not locked in. We can't say 100% that the same house is going to be worth the same thing to 2 different appraisers. So there has to be a little bit of wiggle room here. But again, this is what the agent is doing in the background to try to support your appraisal. Finally, going on to closing. So this is anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks after mutual execution of the contract. If you have all cash, you could be closing in an earlier time frame, maybe 10 days. And you need a great agent, all the transfer paperwork, invoices for your repairs, and a plan. So finally, what the seller is responsible for moving forward into closing is the upkeep and repairs. It needs to look like it did when the buyer agreed to buy it. Final cleaning. Broom clean is fine in a seller's market. If you want to clean it up better, they always love that, as I'm sure you did when you bought your place, if they cleaned it for you. Transfer documentation, and utilities transfer. These are kind of the 2 important things that we help to guide you on when we get to this part in the process. And then they'll do a final walkthrough. So they'll come back and they'll take a look at the home and make sure that all the repairs that were requested were done in the way that they wanted it to be. They want to see it looking the way that they did when they showed it. So you want to make sure you got someone to take care of junk removal or lawn maintenance, leaving all the manuals and the house docs and the keys and openers. And then you get a settlement statement, which is basically the comparative market analysis and net proceeds sheet that we talked about before was an estimate. This is actually what you're going to put in the bank at the end of it. And then we can either do a traditional closing where we all go to the title company and sit down. We could actually split it up, or do a power of attorney, so you don't necessarily need to be here, or all parties don't need to be present. Or you can mail out. So if you've already sold and moved away, we can mail you all the documents that you need and actually close it up that way. So what's next? If you haven't already, you would go through a buyer's consultation to be able to do the same thing on the other side. A simultaneous closing if you're basically selling and then buying right away. Post-closing occupancy is if you need to, again, continue to live in your home and rent it back from the new owner while you find your new place. Or you could be waiting. You collect your money, and now you're going to be out there on the search and you're trying to find the home that makes sense for you. But do know that if you're doing after you close or after your post-closing occupancy, you are homeless. So you need to make a plan for that. And then finally, this is talking about, so that was the entire process from start to finish. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. So I'm just going to jump into a few of the lower cost options and some of the new ones that have just hit the marketplace: Zillow Instant Offers and Opendoor. I've recently been talking to a few people that have done this, and we've been reading some articles about it just to try to figure out what exactly the benefits and drawbacks are of these specifically. What they're trying to do is take off of your hands the process, I guess more the timeline, because an agent will take the load of that process off of you. Again, you saw that we take care of a lot of those things for you. But But if you really don't want anybody in your home, you can put your house out there and they'll send you back an offer. Now, a lot of times we've already talked about Zillow's Zestimate is a pricing calculation that is algorithmic and it's often off. So if you're going to take a lower offer, you might be leaving money on the table there. Basically, they're also focusing on kind of mid-level homes, not luxury or lower priced homes. And you don't really have, what I've heard from people that have gone through the process is you don't really have a single source of info. There's not a lot of education, so you kind of have to watch your own back. There's also not a lot of continuity. It's definitely meant to be a one-time process, just one and done. Open Door, this is the other thing too, is actually we have the slide, or not slide pulled up, we have Open Door's website open, we'll show it to you in a second. They charge an average of 7.4% fee. And they like to say that, you know, traditional selling is about 7 to 10%. And after all is said and done, we saw that there's more than just the real estate commissions. However, if that's their fee, you're not really saving that much. And I really think that the value of a lifelong relationship with a real estate partner that you can trust is worth, you know, the few extra percent. So again, if you really don't want to show your home at all, these are new issues that are, new options that are coming onto the market. Do you want to pull up that site real quick? So yeah, Open Door's own site says that they're typically about 7.4%. So I thought for sure if it was like, okay, they're saving people money by taking out the real estate commissions, but they're not really. Your net is about the same. And the other thing too is from the people that I've talked to that have gone through it, you gotta go to like 2 slides over. It's that one. So this, actually, if you want some entertaining reading, go to BBB and read their complaints. I would do this with any company that you are looking, like, so if you really need to save money, talk to an agent first, but then do your research. You know what I mean? Figure out what people are talking about so you know you might come up against. Go to the other one. So this is their pricing. I mean, they're right there with an average 7.4. It could be all the way up to 13%. And they're saying that your average cost is 7 to 10 on a traditional sale. But again, you saw all those different places where you might spend money. We can also save you money. So I like to think that I know for a fact that I'm earning my keep, the part that you're paying me. I can't control whether or not you have to pay for a bunch of money to repair your home, but the truth is what they do is they send you an offer, then they send you an inspection objection. You have to do everything on that list or they won't buy the home from you. So it's not really saving you money there either. So that's kind of it for there's also a few other discount brokerages out there that just charge a lower fee. But the truth is, again, we've talked about the buyer's agent's going to expect a 2.8%, and 87% of people out there are working with agents that would like to be paid. So if you're not if the 2.8% is off the table, then now we're talking about just 3.2%, right? Which isn't that much. And after all that stuff that we just talked about, for someone that's willing to cut it down to 1%, like I know for a fact that I'm going to earn you 2.2% more. It's really not that big of an adjustment anymore. Does that make any sense? Any questions around that? No? Okay. Let's see here. Go ahead and go. I think this is the last slide that I have. There's a few other things that if you guys want access to them to learn a little bit more about the market, we talked about timing the market. Actually, go ahead and jump to those other 2 tabs. Yeah. So this is the data that I was talking about at the very beginning that really this brokerage is very good at putting together. And so we can send this to you too. They do this quarterly and they will analyze the entire market from top to bottom and really start to draw conclusions out of the data to make decisions, which I think is to use to talk a little bit about why we're here and talking about this today is that you can see this is months of inventory, how many listings do we have on the market, and anywhere down here where we have so few listings and so many buyers, the sellers are driving basically the decision-making process. It's in a seller's market, but you can see now we're starting to bounce back. So we were about as low as we think we could possibly go, and so this is why it might not be a bad time to have this conversation about selling. Can you go to the other one? This is another one that comes out of the multiple listing system. And what you can see here is the active listing count basically was dropping down to historically low inventory rates again. And you can see they're starting to become a trend on this upward path. So if we start to have more active listings, February over February, this is this February, then what's going to happen? Sellers are going to start competing. Prices are going to start either dropping or your days on market's going to go up. So it's not going to be so easy to sell like it was in these last few years. I think it's a good time to start considering it for sure. And then the last one. This is an annual review from the same thing. We can send you all of these things. But you can see down here that the total days on market, while it does seem to be sitting pretty stable, which is nice, the percent of sold to list price. Basically, our bidding wars are dying off. Now we're going back to, I said 98% for that other slide where people aren't getting exactly what they're asking. And the median sold price and the average sold price, you can see here, you can hardly make these numbers out, but this number of appreciation annually is dropping. So where we were used to saying, oh, next year I'll be able to get, for a 350 house, the, 375, it's not necessarily the case. Yeah, we might have had 10% there, but 8, 7, 6, 6.3% is what we do on average over 45 years. And I think we might see that. So any questions around that? And we can send you all these. So we can send you the slide deck and then these two or three different market snapshots if you guys are graph people. I'm a graph person. All right, so if that is it for questions, then I'd say like impact members come up here and we can answer questions for those few in the room who have questions. So these are the impact members again. And Mike, if anyone has questions for you.
I'll be here.
Mike will be right there,
Yeah.
seated, smiling. All right, so any questions about any of the stuff we covered today?
Or something else we didn't cover.
Anybody have a good bracket going for March Madness?
Does anyone have
Duke
their,
still
like,
on it.
Oh, that March Madness.
Yes, twice. That was a great game to watch.
I missed it. I heard it.
Cool. Well, if there's no questions, then you guys don't have to stand up here. But thank you so much from the Impact Group. We really appreciate you guys coming today. And all this stuff will be online. Plus, like I said, we'll send you guys the info so that you can have it. And we would request that you might send it to anybody who would benefit from it. So if anyone else wants to. What was that? Actually, the easiest way to do it would just be to write down on this sign-in sheet do you have any specific questions or requests? But I'll make sure that everyone who attended today and then wrote their information down gets the slide deck and then those 3 market reports. Because they're actually easy reads. I just pulled out a few slides from each of them, but none of them are more than 20 pages at the max.
You can zero in on what you're interested in.
The live version will be available on Facebook.
Yeah, well, yes. So this is the second time we've done live. Hopefully it's a lot better than the first time we did the Facebook Live. And it should be available online. I'm pretty sure we can download it and then you can send it to anybody or we can send the link. So.
We do have a little connectivity issue, so there are 2 different
Oh, okay.
videos. So if we can put them together, we'll do our best and not want to do that.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, we'll do our best to pull that down and make it accessible to people. Sound good? Sweet. All right, well, thank you, everybody. And then here's Mike's info.
Does
There.
anyone have a favorite part of the class?
There it is.
Oh, we did, you're right.
I know I saw it.
Graphs, yeah, there's a lot. They always tell me to take them out. Less graphs, Brandon, less graphs. Where did I find it?
Yes.
On your website. Yeah, I think so. It's a good looking photo. Well, thank you, everybody. Grab a burrito on your way out if you'd like. Hey, Jason, you want pulling those things up in the back? Make it feel like less of a case. Yeah, I think we're good.
Facebook is so funny.